Good afternoon. Today I am going to correct and improve the student's essay you can see printed below. This is an answer to an IELTS writing task 1 question. You can see the question below and the diagram in the picture. The parts of the student's answer I have highlighted. I am going to pay particular attention to, and if you want to try to improve your writing by listening to me, you should first read through the essay. Also, you can click on transcript on YouTube if you have difficulty understanding any words that I use. So let's look at the student's essay now, beginning with paragraph 1. The pie chart. This should be a bar chart, not a pie chart. The sentence is okay, but it could be better if the student tried to use more of their own words rather than the words in the question. For example, the diagram shows the performance of students in school exams in a variety of subjects in the year 1993 to 1994. You're going to get more marks if you can use your own vocabulary rather than the vocabulary in the question. Let's go on to paragraph 2. First sentence: during this period, girls succeeded. No have here because the period is in the past, so we use the past simple tense. Next sentence: indeed, the percentage of girls who passed the English exam was a little over 60% and more than 32% for the French exam, while on the other hand only around 44% of boys passed the English test and just slightly more than 20% for the French test. I put in some new words there to get the students higher marks. You're going to get higher marks if you can use better words to emphasize the numbers, especially high numbers, low numbers, and differences. In this sentence, the student is using a comma instead of a full stop for 61.5%, 32.7%, and the other numbers. We can't use a comma here, it needs to be a period or full stop. Not necessary to use exact numbers, better to say things like just over, just below, more than, slightly more than, slightly lower than. These expressions are going to get you higher marks. Next sentence, the difference. Let's change this. I think we can make this better. This substantial difference in performance between boys and girls can also be seen in history, where the girls achieved a pass rate of over 23%, whereas the boys could only achieve less than 18%. So again, I have made some significant changes in that sentence to improve it, mainly by trying to find more interesting ways of describing the differences. Looking at the student sentence, the phrase 5% more of girls get their exam is incorrect. If we use get, it should be got, past tense. But we can't actually say 5% more of girls passed, because the difference between 18 and 23, which is around 5, is in the region of 30%. Be careful when you look at diagrams, when you compare two figures, the percentage difference in those two figures is not the difference in the numbers you can see here between 17.9 and 23. The difference is 5 as a percentage of 18. This is a very common mistake in this kind of test, and students should be very careful about it. Basic mathematics, if you add 30% to 18, you're going to get around 24. So you should do some practice by yourself looking at diagrams and doing the mathematical calculations in your head, showing the difference between numbers. Another important point in regard to paragraph 2 is that the student has missed out an important piece of information. If we look at the graph, we can see there are 3 categories of information: the difference between boys and girls, the difference between subjects, and the overall pass rate. The first thing a student has to do when they analyze a diagram is to categorize the different types of information in terms of priority. Now, I would say that the most important information here is that the pass rate for exams in general varied enormously, as low as 5% for physics and as high as 60% for English. Secondly, the pass rate for the differences in subjects again is substantial. Again, with subjects like physics getting a far lower pass rate than English and mathematics. Then lastly, the difference between girls and boys. Now, the student is going to talk about the differences between subjects in paragraph 3. He has talked about the differences between boys and girls in paragraph 2, but has not mentioned anything about the overall pass rate. So let's put in a sentence before the beginning of paragraph 2, and this should be something like this. The first very significant information we can discern from the diagram is the enormous difference in pass rates for subjects in general, comma. It was as low as just over 5% in physics and as high as over 60% in English, full stop. Then we go on to talk about the differences between individual subjects in paragraph 3. So let's go on to paragraph 3 now. The first sentence is okay, but we can improve it by trying to add some more interesting words. So how about, it is a cliche that boys are better than girls in science, and the contrary is true in subjects like English and French. Next sentence. The bar chart shows us, however, that on the contrary, the percentages are quite the same for both sexes in mathematics at around 42%. Because the figures 41.9 and 42.2 are so similar, it's easier just to say around 42%. And I have included words like however and contrary to emphasize the point that the figures are different to what we would have expected from our belief that boys are usually better in science. Let's move on to the next sentence. Nonetheless. Nonetheless is the wrong word here. It should be something like however. Actually, this is the wrong kind of word, because this sentence is agreeing with our initial idea that boys and girls have different aptitudes in science subjects. So it is agreeing. We can't use a word which shows difference or contrary. We have to use a word which shows agreement. So let's change this to, when it comes to chemistry and physics, however, the expectation is confirmed. Full stop. The gap between the sexes is marked. We don't say percentages of both sex, just the gap between the sexes is marked. No full stop here. Let's continue and make this one sentence. With only a little over 5% of girls passing the physics test, comma, only half of the pass rate for boys. Full stop. Lastly, there are some other pieces of information which the student hasn't mentioned, which probably are important, particularly craft design and technology, where again we can see that the pass rate for boys is almost double that of girls. So the student probably should have mentioned that at the same time he was talking about physics. He could also have mentioned biology, where we can see the pass rate is almost exactly the same. So this would contradict the idea that boys and girls have the same pass rate in sciences, have different aptitudes in sciences. So we could have said something like, it is a cliche that boys are good at scientific subjects, whereas girls are good at languages and history. And we can see both support and contradiction for this idea in the actual figures. We can see clearly that girls do a whole lot better in English and French than boys, but when it comes to biology, the pass rate is almost exactly the same. Anyway, the student's essay is not too bad. It should be getting a grade in the region of 6 to 6.5, but by trying to have better vocabulary to describe differences and changes, and paying more attention to grammar, especially tense, he should be able to get this up to well over 7. Let me remind the student to rewrite the parts of the essay which I have changed to make sure he understands and remembers these changes. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.